All right, I'd like to bring the September 5th joint Board of Selectmen and Budget Committee meeting to order this morning. Thanks, everyone, for being here. So I guess what we're going to do is we're just going to talk.
I did.
Yeah, Chris did, yeah. He's been trained.
Yes.
So I guess we're meeting today to give, for the select board to give some feedback on your list of questions and your, kind of your process, which is your process. You're the budget committee, you can do what you want to do. And we're also going to get some feedback, I think, from Ashley, are we, on what department heads with these questions as well. So I guess I'd like to start with, what should we start with?
Well, I think that's accurate. So we originally had drafted questions, and then I thought it would be helpful to try and consolidate the questions
Yep.
along with more topics versus just having a full list of questions. So we provided the budget committee as well as the select board the original set of questions and the consolidated questions, which we have a copy in front of you.
Yep.
So we were hoping to get your feedback or department head's feedback on the either really set of questions. Our idea as a budget committee is Ashley's been helpful with getting schedules for department heads to meet. We're hoping to have a meeting, would like to have a meeting next week where we can have a quorum, we can elect chair, vice chair, we can assign people to the departments. I think in discussions. Yeah, well, that will come, yeah. And then we would assign people to the departments, and then, given the dates that you've set, have people attend those if they can, and then also set our schedule for the rest of the year. Okay. So I think this really is a discussion between the select board and budget committee members and department heads to go through the list of questions to say, hey, what's your feedback? What are your thoughts? Is this really off? Is this not something we should be asking department heads or any other feedback we might have as budget committee members on? This is why we want to ask these types of questions. Okay, great.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to first start with some guardrails around the meeting with the department heads by the budget committee members. Is, again, we want to take into consideration their time. And I think it's a great idea to do this, a couple of budget committee members to go meet with each department head. Like I've said before, I think it's a way to build rapport and trust. But I just want to make sure that we respect their time. We give them enough notice, so you're going to have a calendar of days. Hopefully they can fill out some of these questions before your meeting, or if not all of them, so that they'll be prepared. And I'd like to limit those meetings to like an hour. Unless a department head says, no, I've got 3 hours, I'm fine. But if we could limit them to an hour, would be great. And hopefully this is going to result in, when they come in and do their presentations to the full budget committee, you know, the budget committee members that were there in the meetings will be able to just say, yep, we recommend it to the rest of the members for this reason. And it might hopefully make those meetings go faster. Is that kind of the way you feel this is going to work?
I mean, I'll let other members chime in. Typically, we've had 2-hour meetings. I think as new members of budget committee, like if I just think of Cynthia, she might have a lot more questions. Certainly someone who's been doing this a while can be more efficient. But I would say in the past, we've had 2-hour meetings with department.
For those full budget committee men? Oh, even with department
For the
heads?
department heads to go through their department, so to learn more about the department.
Okay.
Those have typically in the past been 2 hours. Colin, you can... Just looking at Colin, since he's done this before and you've attended a ton, I don't recall them ever being just an hour. It's a lot of information to go through in an hour.
Are you guys good with that? All right, I just want to make sure they're good with it. Okay.
Yeah, I think one of the other suggestions is if there's an opportunity for those to be recorded so that other budget committee members can watch them and not come back and ask questions of the department because they weren't able to attend the meeting.
If we want to record those are great. We haven't done that in the past.
Sure.
We've gone to the department. They've given us a tour. They've talked to us about their things. But if we want to make it official, we can do that and record. I don't know.
Our thought process was to have the members who attended the meeting with a particular department lead to then consolidate a report that would
Great.
then be distributed to the other budget committee members.
Yeah.
We would not have a quorum at these meetings.
Yep.
So the recording component, and then we're trying to sort of streamline that part
I think
of it
that's-
as well.
Yeah.
That's great.
And I'd suggest that given this is, this part of the budget process is not new, I think the overall intention is to try to streamline
Yeah.
and really gather salient and sufficient data so that it can inform the budget discussions that then ensue and ultimately get us to the final of a budget committee budget that we're presenting. So
And-
that's sort of the intent. I would strive to make it an hour, but I wouldn't want to truncate
Yeah.
a conversation. I think certain departments, areas are less complex and don't require as much discussion than others. You know, Sam and Public Works it's big, and so there's a lot there. And to new members, I think there's a need to have an appreciation for the scope and issues
Yep.
that go with it. My personal view is that I think doing this year, we will get better next year. And so I think our time demands are going to be dependent, more issue dependent than they
Yeah.
are informational dependent.
Yep.
I think we
That's
talked
my
about
guess.
that.
And I said, and I said that too. I said that department heads should understand this is probably going to be hard this year. It's a change, it's a little change. Change is hard. But you're right. Hopefully, it's setting it up for a more efficient and better process for everybody
Yeah.
going forward.
Okay, do we want public comments?
Sure.
Here.
Yeah.
I would also suggest, to your point, that it's going to get better over time, that the first meeting, maybe the second meeting, you might identify things where analysis could be done, where questions aren't being, may not be answered completely. So you can set up a scope of, these are the areas that we want to look at more thoroughly over the course of the next year. And that just sets the tone for the following capability, right? There may be whole areas of a department you might want to look for synergies or for possible opportunities for cost reductions or what have you, right? So that we can manage the tax impact more thoroughly, right? The impact on debt, blah, 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 so.
Lou?
I think we can actually reduce or have both time and efficiency savings in this new course of action. We're trying to do two things at once. And the way that was done previously, we would have an orientation. You have budget committee members, some budget committee members, some were not available to tour, to have an orientation in each one of the departments. And that took a lot of time. And then we would go and we start, digging around the budgetary process, and that ended up with the same questions being asked over and over again. So I think if we just have one or two meetings with each one of the departments, put some guardrails on it, saying, okay, it's gonna, unless the department head wishes, it should be no more than 2 hours. I think we'll be saving time and effort and actually savings for the town and the department heads.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, this is no different.
Yeah.
The only difference between what we've done in the past and this is providing them in advance questions that we have. I think honestly, in the conversation, in my 12 years, most of these questions, not in detail, but most of these questions have been either asked or given by the department heads. So, but this does make it efficient, I think, more efficient for them to think of in advance and prepare, as well as us to have, I think, a more synergistic view of each department and consistent view of each department versus leaving it up to the person or persons assigned to a department.
Yep. Fair.
So what about feedback on the questions themselves?
Can I
Oh,
just
sorry.
make a quick
Cynthia,
comment
yeah,
as
go
well?
ahead.
As a new budget committee member and trying to get up to speed without really any official training in the process, I think that understanding these parameters and if these questions were written out, I could review them when I go to meet with the department so that
Yep.
someone that's new to this is up to speed much more quickly. I think that'd be really useful. I also feel as if, with respect to time constraints for everybody, having an old committee member and a new committee member, so to speak, have responsibility for each department provides continuity, because I'm going to go meet with Putnam, and I'm completely new, so he's going to have to go through the rec department from the ground up for me.
Absolutely.
And also without framework of what's been done before. So I just feel like that coordination would also help the process. I don't know if everyone feels that way on that topic. I noticed Lindsay would prefer individuals, but I just think this process from a new perspective, a new eyes at the Budget Committee it seems to be much more formulaic, and we can be more carefully followed for people like me.
I think assigning a new and existing person is great. I'd say in the past too, honestly, there've been more than one person. Maybe there's been a department head review that has had only one person, but typically multiple Budget Committee members attend. But formalizing it to have two people is fine as well. I think the challenge will be, as always, finding a time that folks can attend, two people can attend that specific, because department heads only have certain times that they're available, and also aligning that to schedules of folks that have a 9-to-5 job is going to be the biggest challenge, to be honest. Ashley's already provided me some, which I haven't
I think you have them all now.
sent all on out.
Yep.
So I can send that. That'll be part of our discussion, hopefully next week at Budget Committee, is making sure we can attend those meetings.
Comment.
Yep.
I want to just reiterate that this is an opportunity to have robust dialogue and to raise the level of knowledge of all members of the committees and the community to inform discussion and ultimately decision, and that it's fostering, going back to the original document, a mindset of asking questions is okay. It's valuable to do that, and certainly doing it in a manner both in terms of content and style is important, but that it will help us in seeking what our options are. And for the committee, this Budget Committee, the representatives are here, to fulfill its role and do its job. And that is, we're trying to align as much of the inquiry, I guess, and discussion with some of the work the board, Select Board does, naturally, by their process and obligation. And that in doing so, it'll ultimately make the process hopefully better. It may bring conflict, and I think that's just a natural thing that comes from this, and how we engage in different points of view, ultimately to arrive at decisions. So,
I would say, just as the chair, I tried to, when I looked at these questions to consolidate, I tried to I felt like some of the questions were leaning toward how are we reducing costs versus how are we thinking about the future. And again, I mean, I don't see things getting less expensive in the future. So I tried to make sure that the questions allowed the department heads to think about not just ways to be efficient, potentially reducing costs, but also what do we need as a town that might have an increased cost that we need to talk about. Okay. So
Okay.
feedback on
So,
questions?
I think the questions are fine. I went through the original list and sort of highlighted which ones were in scope and out of scope. Just a reminder that you guys are responsible for the fiscal policy, not operational or things like that. But for the most part, I think they're fine. I had a couple of questions that I can
Sure.
run by you guys, just in the language. Again, it's just focused on the costs, rather than, staffing and things like that. But I think it's probably best to hear, and then, Rich, I know will have some things to say, but I think it's probably
Yeah.
best to start with department heads.
So admittedly, the feedback that the department heads reviewed was the original document from July, not the one that was sent earlier this week. They have seen the one from earlier this week, but they only got it last night. So the feedback that I have is really based off of the document from earlier in July, but I think there are still some common themes that make sense of just really ensuring timing's really an issue. And we want to make sure that these conversations are happening sort of, not necessarily one and done, but that there aren't multiple follow-up conversations from various budget committee members that maybe didn't attend but still had questions. The folks are really busy. And this is one aspect of a job, but it is one slice of a pie. So I just want to make sure that we keep that in mind, that the budget process is just really one slice of a very large pie that they are all working off of. I do think that it's important to note that there is very clearly a trust issue on both sides, and we need to work to strengthen that. I think there is a trust issue from the department heads to the budget committee, and I think that there's a trust issue from the budget committee to the department heads. So is there a magic wand for that? No, but I do think that we can get to a place where there is more trust, but I think we all have to work on that. And so just to keep that in the back of our minds as well, that we're really trying to build trust all around. I think, again, just to BB's point, that a lot of the operations questions, which I believe have been taken out of the most recent document, but the operational questions are sort of off the table there. That's for the select board and myself to manage through. And if you have specific questions or issues, you can certainly talk to us, but to leave those to us.
Give me an example of what you mean, operational and off the table.
Yeah, so in the original document, there were several, how much time off are you, how much time off is being taken in your department? I don't have the original list of questions, but there were several more operational questions that were baked in there that maybe for you guys might have been helpful information, but out of scope in terms of sort of management.
Questions about performance indicators.
Yeah, performance.
Benchmarks and things like that, those are sort of out of scope.
I think it's important to remember that, yeah.
I'm sorry, but to be specific, the question of paid time off is a financial question, not an operational question.
Maybe that's a bad example because I don't have the list of questions in
so
front
here's-
of
I
me.
think
so-
in general, and I won't speak for the whole committee, I just think in general, it's important to understand operational to understand its impact fiscally. Now, to get into personal data, no, that's not in our purview. To look at benchmarking, I don't know if that's out of scope or not. But how do we measure ourselves? And if that's not in our purview, and if we don't, we don't. If we do, we do. And because I think there's often a challenge that's brought somewhere at some point by somebody that says, well, we have 9 positions. How many towns of like size, of like makeup what do they have? And
Yeah, but they might offer different services than we.
I understand that, but that's
Yeah.
where you get into the weeds of conversation around comparison that I'm not sure is worthwhile.
I can see from a department head the question of why are they asking this, but I can also say if I was a new member, I'm not saying I'm questioning overtime, or it's the question of how do you budget for that? How do you budget for overtime? Like, just explain to me how the department works. I think there has to be some trust that we might ask some questions that are just informational for us to make, oh, okay, now I understand why you do it that way, versus having a discussion that is a little bit more heated. And Chief, I'm just going to use you as an example, because that comes up sometimes in your budget is like paid overtime. I think that would help resolve that discussion here when we have a budget committee, so she doesn't have to answer that question. And
Sure.
sometimes those go back and forth and take longer, versus just saying, we'd like to know why you do it. What are your KPIs? So we know.
Yeah, that's very corporate, and I think this is another sort of theme here. You guys have to remember that you all are our boss. Like, every taxpayer in here, everybody that votes every year, things change so frequently. It is very hard for department heads to look out 2, 3, 5, 10 years because things change based on what we all vote on. And so we are living in a constant state of change. Every year, things are changing. So when we're asked those questions, we're not saying we haven't done it, it's because we can't. It doesn't make sense for us to spend that time when things are going to change 12 months later.
I would hope that budget committee members aren't holding someone to say, well, you said 5 years ago, this is what your 10-year
Yeah.
vision was. But is it helpful to know? I mean, maybe 10 years is too long, but I'm sure Chief Cobb has thought, okay, in 2 or 3 years or 4 years, this is where I'd like the department to be. We're not holding people to KPIs, but, and I know you say it's corporate-y, but I think every department, I would say that Chief Lyon in his mind has like, this is how I'm measuring how we're doing as a fire department. I'm not saying it has to be a number or the number of calls, but it's, again, it's just informational of like, I'm not gonna comment on someone's performance indicator. That's not my job as a budget committee member. But to know that, or at least to know like what you're thinking, I think is helpful.
Yeah, I think you need to be prepared that there are going to be departments that don't answer that because they're not able, they have not had capacity to even think about that, but also that
I get
it just doesn't make sense
Yeah, and
for
if
them
they
to be
say,
looking
I don't
at it.
have one, okay, that's really more of a select discussion with the department, not a budget committee.
Yep.
Fair.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts from budget committee members, or were there any other questions or thoughts from select board on questions?
I mean, I like sorry. I think it's a good idea to submit these questions ahead of time to the department heads. But again, I just want to be respectful of them
Yeah.
ahead of time. That's-
Well, and I think that was the purpose, is to go from Charlie and I's original, 50-ish to down to 20. And again, if there are questions, I would say to department heads, if they're here live or listening, recording,
Yep.
if there are questions that they feel like they can't answer right now, that is fine as well. I think they just need to let the members of the budget committee who attend those meetings to say, I don't have a 10-year vision, I'm thinking the next 2 or 3 years. Because I think it's an important point that you make that, well, my vision is 3 years, this is what it's gonna look like, but if we don't get the vote or the money to do that,
Absolutely.
I can't do that, right? So, but again, I think it's just to understand what their thought process is. And I think it goes along, and I know Lou's been preaching this and other budget committee members, is back to the CIP of long-term planning.
Yeah.
We have to start as a town thinking about 5 years, right? Or longer, whatever that time frame is, because that will help make it more efficient. And instead of reacting to things day to day, saying this is where we're going to try to invest our money in the future.
Yeah.
Agree. I want to talk about trust again, because I trust you. I trust you, and I want to be trusted. I don't understand where that comes from, okay? I just don't. And I approach my role from a perspective of, I'm looking to the individuals to provide information so the committee can do its job, perform its role. I think I will project a little here that when we have the budget discussion on X department, what I have found irritating is when a question comes up that sort of jumps the department head. They're not aware of the question, or it's coming from a place that appears to have some kind of motivation behind it other than just the question. And I think what we want to avoid is that dynamic entirely. And so that when the budget presentation comes to the committee by a department lead or head, that they already know the questions that we want to have information on to help inform.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful. Yeah.
So I don't understand this trust thing, and I don't want to, I personally don't like spending a lot of time talking about it, but it keeps coming up. So.
I would say again, I'm just going to say, being here for a long time, I think some of that, I can understand the trust issue, whether it's from the last 5 years or even longer, is that, and I think as a budget committee, we've talked about this, we also need to be efficient in how we ask things of department heads. In the past, there have been requests, lots of requests of analysis or things that come up last minute, and can you have this in X amount of time? So I think it's up to us too to think about how we're communicating, whether it's with the select board or department heads, and asking for things versus inundating them with a number of requests because we need that all of a sudden, right? So I can understand from their perspective, like, we've gone through the meetings, we're presented the budget, we've had the day-long session, and now you're asking for this thing that's gonna take me, you're asking for it next week when it could take multiple weeks to put together. So that's a perspective I have. Lynn?
Hi. So I do want to speak to the trust issue, and I'm speaking probably for the other department heads, because we've talked about this. We do feel that, well, one, you already know that we don't trust that our budget's not going to get slashed the minute we're not here. Not that it's intentional that you say, oh, Will's not here, so I'm going to talk about this. It just, the organic conversation turns around to office supplies, and then you start hitting that. So there is that, but there's also a feeling that when we're asked questions by the budget committee, they're looking for a gotcha moment. Why do you need that? How many times do you draw your guns that you need a new one, a new set of guns? Like, that's the most ridiculous question. But those questions, and that's the biggest one that sticks in my mind, but those questions come out and we feel that you're trying to find a gotcha moment where we've asked for something that we ridiculously don't need. And I'm not saying you specifically, Charlie, I'm just saying, and I know that this is a different budget committee than has been, last year or the year before. But that's where so as a department head, we do have a level of expertise, and I do get that you want to understand what we do, how we run our departments, but when, we'd have an ask, and then instead of asking us, hey, can you compare these numbers to, say, another department, so another town, the budget committee goes out and gets those answers themselves, and then starts harassing us on, well, I called so-and-so and they said this. That gives us the sense that you don't trust our expertise. If you had said, can you double check what Wilmot pays for that? Can you bring those numbers to us? Sure, all day long I'll go check other people. But when we're being questioned like I said, it almost feels like you want a gotcha moment. So I think that's where that level of not feeling trusted comes from, if that makes sense.
That's really helpful. And I think we can work with that in how we proceed. And I also do think that there's a lot of really good information that you all have that if we have a better understanding. And it's asking for that and not doing it in a way that's unnecessary or implying I got you on something.
Agreed, yeah.
Yeah.
Be great.
Yeah, if I could just,
Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
a couple of things. Just a few things. I will say, I always find this intriguing because after 17 years on the NBC for the school district, as I mentioned, I think at our last meeting that I was at, this is something that I always wrestle with and that I will continue to wrestle with in terms of, what is appropriate. I think the dilemma, as I see it, is we do have professionals who run these departments and who have a level of expertise that we don't have. And it's natural that they might find it difficult and challenging when people start asking them these questions. That being said, it is also, though, the responsibility of the Municipal Budget Committee to ask these questions. I mean, I certainly know the number of stupid questions I've asked the school administration over the years. It would be quite a list. And I'm sure that they've groaned internally, but they've tried to be patient and answered my questions. And I think that's just the natural sort of tension that exists here, that it's difficult. Because the reality is you folks do have a job to do as well, just like our department heads do. And while they might be offended at some of the questions, that's still your right to ask those questions. And that's just the difficulty of the situation as I see it. And so I'm hoping, of course, that our staff will always be patient, especially with me when I come up with another stupid question. But, you know, that's the dilemma that we face. A couple of things, though, I thought about this. You know, certainly I do have the same concerns about trying to be mindful of people's time, because, you know, our staff do have other things to do besides answer, you know, our questions, et cetera. And so I appreciate that. I think people are cognizant of that, and I think that's terrific. One thing I just wanted to throw out for your consideration is whether or not you might want to add a question simply that says, what was your budget over the last 5 years, and what were the general reasons for that increase or decrease? You know, literally to just have a big picture number where you can say, why has the budget increased this much? What were the drivers behind that? And then frankly, you know, it then encourages the conversation to say, will we see similar things in the next 5 years? Will that level of increase, or will it decrease? You know, what were the drivers behind those numbers over the last 5 years? Just sort of, again, a big picture of each department and say, what has driven that, you know, what generally will be a budget increase that you're going to be talking about. And finally, you know, as to sort of the big picture purview of the MBC for the town, again, probably because of my bias, having been on the MBC for the school district for 17 years, I tend to feel like, you know, to your point, Charlie, I do think a lot of these things having to do with financial matters do tangentially, you know, they have to do with operational questions. And so, you know, as a general rule, I'm comfortable with you folks, you know, asking whatever questions you think you need to develop the information that you need to make decisions about the finances ultimately. You know, there are things that perhaps you might really sense that you're getting a little bit far afield, but certainly I've always, with the MBC for the school district, I've always been very comfortable about asking questions that arguably were getting outside of my realm, but I felt like were necessary for me to know the answer, just so I could sort of, you know, sort of complete my analysis of something. And again, it might have immediately gotten, you know, sort of mentally added to the list of Anderson's stupid questions that I asked, but, you know, sometimes it was helpful to me to know the answer. So, as I said, as a general rule, I'm comfortable with the MBC being fairly broad in its questioning, and because I do think it's very hard to draw that line as to when do you, you know, and if you'll forgive me, I always, for whatever reason, I always remember that in law school, and Cynthia, you'll remember this as well, it was always interesting to me that the mechanism that the United States Congress uses to pass many of its laws is something called the Commerce Clause, and it is simply this kind of ridiculous analysis that they do to say, is it related to interstate commerce? And the things that the Congress passes laws about, claiming that it's related to interstate commerce, you know, one time it had to do with, you know, a law about guns near schools. And the Supreme Court finally said, that's a little bit, you know, interstate commerce, guns around schools, we don't see it. And so, you know, it's kind of a weird, maybe a lawyer analogy, if you will, but that's sort of the way I see, you know, with you folks, you know, it is kind of a broad, sweeping thing, and I think it's appropriate, because sometimes these things actually are related to interstate commerce, and it's fine that you kind of draw those, you know, connect those dots, if you will. So those are a few of my thoughts.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. I mean, it's a great question to ask. I think I can add that. I hate to add a question to the list, but, and I think, again, maybe just in hindsight, I'm going to let department heads, I'm going to let budget committee members ask the questions that they want to ask too. I would say as a department head, probably expect that while this is maybe the formal list that we would love to go through, I'm sure there's going to be a committee member who's like, hey, what about this? Now that we're talking, they'd like to have more information. So maybe set that as an expectation, not to be formally asked, but maybe instead of the 5 to 10 years, maybe it's just in the future, right? Like, think about the future. I'm not asking, maybe it's not a 10-year thing, but as you think about the future, what does that look like for you to make it, if they want to be more consistent with their answers? I'm happy to do that.
If I could have one other thing, Chris?
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, I just would say this, you know, ideally, hopefully, if these questions work well, it might even be beneficial, hopefully, to our department heads in terms of giving them some things to think about that maybe they hadn't necessarily considered really strongly in the past. So hopefully, you never know, there might be some benefit on both sides.
Yeah. Colin?
Thank you. I haven't read any of the questions, but the target here is department-specific conversations. That's good. How does the select board and the budget committee and department heads work cross-departmental issues from a budgeting point of view and budgeting opportunities under the proposal. How would the cross-departmental opportunities be addressed in front of the select board and the budget committee if all the conversations are vertical silos?
I think that's a good question. I think they naturally come up. So technology, for instance, has come up before. What are we thinking about? And that's a part of the questions back here is, what key technologies does your department use? How could their capabilities be more fully utilized to add value to your operations? How could we enhance departments' efficiencies? So I also think it comes up naturally in conversation as we have the discussions around each individual department during budget committee members. We find opportunities to talk about, and I'm going to use what's the tool that you use now, Lynn?
Questica.
Questica. That's something that the money that we spend on just general IT has come up before. So individual department line items have then generated a discussion on how do we be more efficient across the departments.
I'll also say that in the past few weeks, our department heads have been emailing each other questions, even if the line item falls within their budget, but it potentially serves other departments. They are emailing, asking for that data of what needs are now so that they can bake that into their budget. So there are, at least on our side, those conversations happening.
You do have this as a question, though. Opportunities exist for increased collaboration or shared services with other town departments. So they do have the question here, Colin, for them to discuss. And we'll be discussing it, too, during our budget jamboree.
Do you want my
as
copy?
we usually do.
Just to look? Okay.
I just have a process question on this. Have we decided that we would submit this list of questions and the department heads would respond to them in writing in advance of our meeting, or it's just a conversational list?
I mean, I don't want to, sorry.
Ask that question of them. What would they prefer?
Yeah, that's one very important question. And I also want to say that there's a lot of discussion about time. And everyone, I really believe everyone in this room feels the same way, because we're all volunteers doing this work. Yep. So the last thing we want to do is take up valuable time for all of us. And I do feel like, I'm new, but I feel like this could really streamline the process for everybody, for you, and most importantly. But regarding whether you'd prefer.
Honestly, I think that depends on the department. Like for me, a lot of those questions do not apply. I don't have, a bunch of employees. So a lot of my questions are going to be discussion type, but another department may feel that, I want to get these down in writing and I want to give those to you. I was going to address, every year we're asked about synergies and can we do, collaborations and stuff. So we do. Some of the simple ones are like, we all order from Staples. We have a corporate account. We get the discount based on volume. We all order from Amazon, which is a corporate account. We get a discount. And that's just some of the small stuff. We always look to, heating oil. We get the discount. We all have the same rate. Everybody included in the library. So we do look for those. If there are other areas that we're missing, we definitely, would explore that. Questica can make it easy for you guys to look at, because you must have ideas in your head of different categories that would be something we could look at. You can go into Questica, and you'll have a training session with me. Go into Questica, and you can, type in gasoline, and it'll pull up every department, our gasoline line items. You can go in and check insurances, and it'll pull up all of our insurances. So maybe that's something, if you guys are asking about synergies and collaboration, but maybe you guys have ideas already of where you want to know if we already are, and that would be really helpful to us too.
I'm sorry. Just in relationship to Cynthia, your question, it's my understanding is that we would send 2 representatives of the budget committee to each department conversation. That those 2 would have the responsibility of consolidating that information.
Yeah.
And sharing it formally via a written document with the remainder of the budget committee. But also, before it being shared, getting it back to the department heads so that they could ensure accuracy or additional data or information if it was needed. So
Yeah.
that
That'd be
was a good
great.
thing from a protocol standpoint.
Yeah.
Versus that they felt the need to, send us a written document in advance of the meeting and all of
Right.
that.
Okay.
I don't think there was an expectation that they all reply in bullet points or whatever. I think it is up to the budget committee. We're asking them to follow this process, that if you're attending that meeting, that you're providing, as they answer these, you're providing that written answer and then provide it to the budget committee members. I like the idea of sending it back to the department head so they have a chance to review and ensure accuracy. But there wasn't an expectation that there's a online form that they fill out, et cetera.
Just on that note, one of our committee members in their responses, who isn't at the meeting, but they had sent recommendations, had sort of requested that be the case in the sense of just having, given the department heads an opportunity to respond thoughtfully, not just in the spur of the moment to the question. But I agree what you both said, whatever works for the department heads really makes the most sense.
Yeah, I think there's I'm going to go back to the level of trust, at least in my mind. People can disagree that there's a level of trust that they'll get these questions, they'll think about them, they'll respond, and it's up to us to make sure they're answering these questions during our meeting. I mean, unless other members disagree. Okay.
I think it does depend on the department head. Like, I look at this list and I think, oh, I don't want to forget anything either. So I personally will take each question, write out an answer, make sure I've formulated my thoughts properly, that I hit on all of the key points that I think are important to you to be able to make your informed decisions. Looking at this list, I envision, just for me personally, between 5 and 10, maybe 15 hours of work that I will put into this document before I even meet with the budget committee member, because I want to be able to provide some context to these. Like, can you provide an overview of your staffing model? To me, that's more than just, we have 9 police officers, 5 dispatchers, and 1 admin assistant. I would like to provide a little bit of historical context. In 2018, I think we added a police officer. In 2022, we added a dispatcher. These were the reasons why we have a full-time admin assistant, for these reasons. So it's, to me, I would desire to provide you with more than just these black and white responses, because I think that's what you're getting at, is you want to know not so much like, why do you need all this overtime, but to your question about, what is it, unproductive time? Is that what the term was? Productive, pay time off and all that, productive, unproductive. Some departments can get by if someone is out sick for that day or that week, and they don't have to fill that. Police's dispatch is not one of those. We need to have somebody working all the time. So those are just some of the things that I would desire to provide. So I would tend to write answers down more so I don't forget anything, and I can provide all of that information. Also, I anticipate, again, for me, between 5 and maybe 15 hours of preparatory work, which is fine. Just giving you asked about time, so.
I would, sorry to interrupt, I would
That's okay.
also hope that for the budget committee, that this is a living, breathing document, so that next year, you don't have to spend
Sure, yeah.
5 to 10
yeah.
hours doing this. It's a
Yep.
copy-paste.
And I think what you'll find with some of the collaborations between departments, I'll use a very small example. The police department locks up the bathrooms at the beaches throughout the summer at night. That saves a rec department employee overtime or finding somebody for an hour every day to go down and lock up the bathrooms. But the police department does it because we're out and about, and why not? It makes sense. But that's an example of a great collaboration, I think, that's in between departments, but it doesn't necessarily always translate to dollars and cents. It could if we required a rec department employee to go down and lock up the bathrooms, and Putnam comes in for 2 hours and does that 7 days a week. But that's just a very, very small example, I think, of the ways that we constantly collaborate between departments and ask for things from each other and support in a variety of ways. Will saves the police department a lot of knocking on doors by the amount of phone calls he does to get dogs registered, for example. That's another example. So yeah, that's, yep.
Great, thank you, Chief. Lou, go ahead.
You know, and your words are of course, they show tremendous expertise. What we are doing it's basically, in short, in a capsule, is we are looking at a strategic vision for the city that takes what happened in the past, trends and expenditures in the past, and forwarding them to the future, 5, 10 years, whatever. But I think it's going to be a good exercise. But we, as in the Budget Committee, need to take into account the time that's spent and the number of meetings that are going to be held. And on the other hand, we need to recognize that no one has as much expertise in running this town as the department heads. And they know the trends, they know the expenditures, they know the future. And I'm particularly interested in the future, not because, our job is year to year, but we also need to realize that there may be some expenditures that are related into the future. Training, building a particular sub-department or a particular function that will take us through the years. Our job is to provide the services that the people of New London want, and I think that this way, I think I'm beginning to believe that we have a really good process here.
If I could, before we get too far or start to wrap up, I have 2 statements from Budget Committee members that would like to be read for the record, if I could read those. So the first one is from Karen, who said, as I mentioned earlier, I will not be able to attend the meeting tomorrow. I appreciate the opportunity to submit my comments in advance. Here they are. It would be beneficial to modify the proposed discussion process with the department head leads, specifically assigning 2 members from the Budget Committee to each department, one with prior experience and another who is newer to the committee. This approach would enhance both continuity and depth of knowledge. Additionally, time is of the essence for scheduling and conducting meetings between the larger Budget Committee itself and those with department leads. We should arrange a meeting for the full Budget Committee as soon as possible to address pending items from previous meetings. These include addressing the selection of a chair and the editing and approval of outstanding meeting minutes. This meeting could also help establish a schedule for meetings with the department leads and outline the future calendar of Budget Committee members, which I think we've talked about as far as scheduling something for next week and assigning folks. We also have now all of the opportunities from department heads to when there's availability. So that was from Karen. From Lindsay, this is my statement to be submitted for the meeting on September 5th. Meeting procedures, 10 to 12 meetings max. Some may want extra credit, and that's fine too. We should predetermine now when we vote and stop letting it get deflected without just cause. We each have a particular department we're responsible to meet and discuss basic operational budgetary requirements and share our report with members. Then they listen. Ask questions of anyone. Some may want extra credit, and that's fine too. Then we vote. We each only have one. We're voted in, do what is best for you, worry about your own self, and one vote. Let's not spend too much time trying to argue the point. If any of us runs again, the taxpayers will let us know. This level of micromanagement is not something I'm going to do. Please let me know when the official budget meetings start. Okay. I also suggest aligning the department heads' presentations and voting dates along with the Board of Selectmen. Yeah. Okay. So those are the 2 statements. Are there any other, speaking of statements, Lynn, statement.
I want to end on a good note. One, and this is me, I'm not speaking for other department heads at this point, but the new questions that you sent out, very appreciative that they are much more municipal focused. The first round of questions sounded very corporate on some levels, so it was nice to read that it was a little bit more municipal. And then I do want to defend Charlie a little bit. Poor Charlie. He asked the question, and the way he worded it, I think it went off the rails. He said, if a department head is out, do they need to be replaced? Or if they take vacation, do they need to be replaced? And suddenly people thought, oh my God, he thinks we should fire the department head for taking a vacation. But his thought was, and I understand it, is if they're out, do we have to pay someone to cover while they're out? If any employee is out, and that's where the overtime discussion came in. So I just want to make sure that he's not feeling abused.
Thanks. I didn't know that that was a question. Can you introduce yourself? Yeah, turn it on and introduce
so many rules. I just want to say, as a
Can you just for the record, introduce yourself?
yeah, Dorothy Hitchmoth. So as a taxpayer, I just want to say I trust you guys. I trust your expertise. You know, we're all out on the front lines together. I get it. So I think that's worth saying. But I also think the budget committee can be your best advocates if you school them properly. So I hope you school them properly and answer those questions. I think it'll be a good process. And in a healthy municipality, when the committee is really well informed and your expertise comes through the committee, they will protect you from all of us crazy people at the town meetings. So hopefully, you know, in a healthy municipality, that's what'll happen. And I'll say never become a doctor, because every single patient that I see, we have to report in great detail why we think what we think and why we're doing what we're doing. And it's insane. So I hope that never happens to you guys. And if it does, I apologize ahead of time. But yeah, from the taxpayer perspective, thank you. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
And Chris, if I could just, if you don't mind, if I could just add my thanks to all of you folks for putting this together. I think it is helpful. Don't be surprised if you see me shamelessly pilfer some of it for use in the school district going forward. But I appreciate all of your efforts.
Don't worry, we still have to work on our questions for the selectmen. Thank you, selectmen, thank you, public, Ashley. I think for, just since we have the certain budget committee members here, I would look to try and get a meeting scheduled for next week as early as possible. If that, I don't know schedules, I can send out a Calendarly or something to try and see what works best. Again, I know that's sometimes difficult. Something after the work hours would be beneficial. And then that way we could elect the chair, vice chair. Meeting minutes, I think there's some question on, I know that Kim took minutes last time. I've reached out to her and have asked for those, but I have not heard back. But is it the rule that the committee now is responsible for their minutes? Because that is news to me.
So I think in general, committees, yes, are in charge of their meeting minutes. I will be very honest with you. My capacity to do much more than whack whatever is in front of me, the whack-a-mole game, is pretty slim. So we have asked all committees that they manage their own meeting minutes and agendas, get those over to us, and then we can post those. But yes, that is, and I'm happy to follow up with Kim if that's helpful.
No, I mean,
No,
I think it's
we were using AI, weren't we? Google AI to record minutes?
I don't
I
think.
don't know.
Last year.
I don't know. We had a recorder who would either from the recording or was here in person would take minutes.
Yeah, I was under the impression that we were using some of the meeting capability of Google. Yeah, I mean, it's,
She types them up
Then you edit that.
from the recording. So Casey can take the minutes from the, but that's only if the meeting is recorded. If it is not recorded,
Yeah, I mean, all of our meetings have been recorded, so that, I mean, again, if that's what we have to do, I think we just need to set that as an expectation. I would say I would not, it's probably not going to be as accurate as what's been done in the past.
Sure.
And probably less comprehensive.
I think if all of your meetings are recorded, then
They're public, so they
we'll
have to be, yeah.
we'll get the recording, and Casey can manage those minutes.
Great. We will supply the minutes from the last meeting, and I know we haven't voted on the one
Okay.
from even February, so we'll do that for the next meeting.
Yeah, Dorothy Hitchcock, quick suggestion. I serve on like 3 other boards. A really good use of AI is an AI note taker. I strongly suggest that you use one of those tools. It will remove so many headaches
Well,
and
yeah.
increase operational time. I mean, if you're not doing that,
Zoom already has, I don't know if we have
Correct.
a Zoom account that has the AI recorder, but Zoom has an AI recorder that takes notes.
Yeah,
So we may want to look into that account. Not AI note, I mean Zoom, if you're using
yeah,
Zoom.
we can't use Zoom in here, though. Yeah, this isn't Zoom.
Okay, so, There's
But
lots of tools I can help with.
yes, there is an app that a few of us use for some note-taking that seems to be great.
Okay.
Do we have an IT department in town? No, we used to be, Mike Williams used to be an IT office.
Yep, so he's no longer with us, he's retired.
Okay.
So we have a third-party vendor that we use out of North Carolina, and they support us from an IT, like, equipment perspective.
Because it would be, may I offer that the town come up with a, how do you call it, a standard note-taking app or note-taking software? And then all the committees in town actually can do that, because there's going to be quite a variance between each one of them.
I think that's something you guys will look into.
Sure.
But for now, we'll have
Happy to look
the
into it.
process that we used in the past, which is, sorry, I forget her name.
Casey,
Casey will take notes based on the recording.
yes.
Great. Does that work? Well, I will throw, I literally today will throw out an email with Calendarly of availabilities, so that I can get that back to Ashley and schedule in time for next week.
Perfect.
I don't want to speak for Lindsay or Kim. I know they both work as well as Karen's. I don't know how long Karen's out of town for, so. Okay. Oh, this is not our meeting, so we don't have to close it out. Motion seconded. All right, thanks, everybody.
Okay.